America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Hemkaur Saroya, and on the show today, reports have emerged of behind-the-scenes efforts of the Trump administration trying to get Iran back on the negotiations table. They have discussed possibly helping Iran access as much as $30 billion in civilian energy-producing nuclear program and easing of sanctions. However, there's no confirmation on the set date for talks yet. That's something we'll explore on the show today.
Also on the show, there has been a rather shocking development for conservationists. 5 tigers were found dead in the Hills Wildlife Sanctuary in Karnataka on Thursday in a single day. Officials say it could be a case of poisoning. We'll bring you the details on that. Let's start with the headlines.
Iran denies reports that it's set to resume nuclear talks with the United States. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says a bill suspending cooperation with UN nuclear watchdog is now binding after approval by a top vetting body decision ultimately to be decided by the Supreme Leader Khamenei.
US media report says Trump administration is considering easing sanctions and helping Iran access $30 billion to build a civilian nuclear program as part of attempts to bring Tehran back to the negotiating table.
Barack Obama and Joe Biden sent pallets of cash, American taxpayer dollars, in a failed attempt to buy the Iranian regime's compliance with a weak and ineffective deal.
White House claims world is closer to peace due to Trump ordering the strikes against Iran. Takes a dig at past presidencies, saying they tried to buy Tehran's compliance.
We were watching closely, and there was no indication to the United States that any of that enriched uranium was moved prior to the strike.
White House says there is no indication that any enriched uranium was removed from any of the 3 sites in Iran which were targeted in the US strikes.
Israel closes crossings into northern Gaza, cutting the most direct route for aid. Gaza Civil Defense Agency claims 56 people killed on Thursday, including 6 who were waiting for food in 2 separate locations.
India makes history. SpaceX Dragon carrying the Axiom mission for docks with the International Space Station. The crew, including India's Shubhanshu Shukla, will spend approximately 2 weeks on the ISS, conducting scientific research and STEM outreach activities.
Asia Pacific markets mostly climbed Friday, tracking Wall Street gains after the White House downplayed looming tariffs. Japan's Nikkei hit fresh highs, Australia advanced, and US stocks closed near record levels, with the S&P 500 up 2.9% for the week.
Top seed Jessica Pegula gets a big win ahead of Wimbledon. The American held off compatriot Emma Navarro in Bad Homburg Open for her first semi-final since April.
Das ist Sieg Pegula. Sie gewinnt 2:1. Jessica Pegula.
Now, the White House said that Operation Midnight Hammer, which was a targeted military strike by the United States against Iranian nuclear sites, is expected to bring about lasting peace and stability in West Asia.
Now, the White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt took a dig at the past presidencies in the US, emphasizing that Iran was weeks away from being able to produce a nuclear weapon.
Barack Obama and Joe Biden sent pallets of cash, American taxpayer dollars, in a failed attempt to buy the Iranian regime's compliance with a weak and ineffective deal. President Trump sent a fleet of American warplanes to destroy Iran's ability to produce a nuclear weapon. The United States and the entire world are safer because of this president's decisiveness.
According to a CNN report, the Trump administration is considering a proposal to ease sanctions on Iran, potentially allowing the country to access up to $30 billion to develop a civilian nuclear program and releasing billions of dollars in frozen funds in a bid to revive nuclear talks.
The report, citing 4 sources, said that behind-the-scenes talks have been ongoing between Iranian officials and key US and West Asian players, despite recent military escalations between Iran and Israel. These diplomatic efforts continued even after a ceasefire agreement was reached this week.
However, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said in an interview on state TV that Tehran currently has no plan to meet with the United States, contradicting US President Donald Trump's statement that Washington planned to have talks with Iran next week.
No agreement has been made to resume negotiations now. I am stating clearly that no agreement has been made, no promise has been made, nor have we talked at all about restarting negotiations. But the fact that we are examining among ourselves what is in the interest of the Iranian people is another discussion. So far, there has been no agreement, no subject for negotiation.
Now, the Iranian foreign minister also said that a bill suspending cooperation with UN nuclear watchdog was now binding after being passed by lawmakers and approved by Iran's Guardian Council. However, the law will ultimately be decided upon by the Supreme National Security Council, technically led by the president, but ultimately accountable to Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
Furthermore, French President Emmanuel Macron said that US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities were genuinely effective, but the worst case scenario would be if Tehran now exits the global non-proliferation treaty. Meanwhile, Russia has accused the United States and Israel of being responsible for the colossal damage to the activities of the UN nuclear agency in Iran.
It is the United States and Israel that are responsible for the colossal damage to the activities of the IAEA. No matter how hard they try to blame Tehran for all the sins, we cannot allow the bombing of nuclear facilities to become literally commonplace.
On the other hand, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that a victory over Iran could pave the way for new peace opportunities, which Israel must not waste.
We have fought with strength against Iran and achieved a great victory. That victory opens an opportunity for a dramatic expansion of the peace agreements. We are working vigorously on that. Along with the release of our hostages and the defeat of Hamas, there is a window of opportunity here that must not be wasted.
Now, his comment was an apparent reference to the Abraham Accords, US-sponsored agreement struck by Israel to normalize relations with the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Morocco. For more on this, we're now being joined live by John Erth. He's the Senior Policy Director for the Center for Arms Control and Non-Proliferation in Washington and former member of the US delegation to NATO. Thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Let's just begin with the assessments, different assessments that we're getting from both the United States and Iran. The United States, we know, has been trying to push for talks. Iran, on the other hand, seems reluctant. We do know after what's happened, there is an absence of trust between the two. That being said, what's your assessment of whether the negotiation talks will go forward or not?
I think that it's very early in the process, and there's a lot of distrust built up. Remember that there were talks scheduled before the airstrikes began on Iran, and that these were canceled as a result of the Israeli and later U.S. attacks on Iranian military installations. So right now, the feeling in Iran is that they had agreed to talks occurring, and they were attacked anyway.
Mr.
So
Edith,
there is some distrust built up, and this is going to have to be overcome.
I hear your point, sir. Mr. Edith, just to see, I know it's too early right now, but if we see the developments so far, you have the US on one side, which is willing to consider easing sanctions and even provide Iran access to some $30 billion to develop a civilian nuclear program. And then you have Iran on the other side, which was supposedly obliterated as far as its nuclear sites were concerned, saying that we are not ready for the talks. Should it not be the other way around? How do you read this situation? It seems there is more of an outreach from the US to get Iran back on the table, and Iran saying we're going to take our time.
It's a very interesting situation. The deal that there would be economic relief in return for some kind of return to compliance from Iran was basically the deal that was on the table during the Biden administration, and the deal that Iran did not accept. So what has changed now? Well, there was a conflict. There were attacks on Iran. The situation is materially worse. Relations are worse. So the conditions are substantially worse now than they were 4 years ago. So it's difficult to see that there are grounds for much agreement. That said, I'm a professional diplomat, and I always think that there is a good reason to talk, and that is better than further violence. So I would like to see the talks begin, and I would like to see the different sides explore where there might be grounds for common ground and possible agreement going forward.
Right, Mr. Hegseth, of course, but from what we're seeing right now, Iran does appear to be rather adamant. Of course, the cooperation when it comes to the IAEA, that's always been a sticking point. Right now, again, it's in the spotlight. Do you feel this is more damaging, considering this will negate chances of monitoring Iran's nuclear programs in the future? And that pretty much brings us back to square one. And can this perhaps spell Iran's exit from the non-proliferation treaty?
That's an excellent question. I think that this was a very carefully considered step that Iran has made. They stopped cooperation with the IAEA. They did not withdraw from the NPT yet. This was a clear signal that they are serious. And this is one piece of leverage that they have. They know that the rest of the world does not want to see them stop cooperating. The cooperation was minimal anyway.
Right.
And they do not want to see withdrawal from the NPT. So this is a way to signal we are serious about this. We're going to do something that you don't like, and we're going to hold this as leverage in possible negotiations coming up. So it's a shrewd negotiating move.
Mr. Edith, just to see, I know it's too early right now, but if we see the developments so far, you have the US on one side, which is willing to consider easing sanctions and even provide Iran access to some $30 billion to develop a civilian nuclear program. And then you have Iran on the other side, saying that we are not ready for the talks. Should it not be the other way around? What do you read this situation? It seems there is more of an outreach from the US to get Iran back on the table, and Iran saying we're going to take our time.
I
I hear your point, sir. That was John Edith joining us here on World DNA. Always a pleasure speaking with you. There will be lots more to discuss as this unfolds. It's a very, very tricky time as we are proceeding into these talks yet again. Would love to have you on the show again.
Thank you very much.
Now, Israel has temporarily halted aid supplies into Gaza for 2 days amid growing concerns that humanitarian aid is being diverted by Hamas.
Now, this comes after videos circulated online showing masked men riding on aid trucks, while some Israeli officials claim that these men are affiliated with Hamas. Local clan leaders insist that they were deployed to protect the aid, not seize it.
Well, the decision to pause deliveries was taken after Prime Minister Netanyahu and Defense Minister of Israel Katz, ordered the military to formulate a plan to prevent Hamas from intercepting supplies meant for civilians. An Israeli official said the suspension will last for 2 days, giving the military time to review security measures around aid transportation.
In the video that sparked controversy, dozens of masked men, some armed, most holding sticks, were seen riding on aid trucks, while former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett claimed that this was proof of Hamas interference. Gaza's tribal leaders say they were only protecting supplies from the looters.
The Higher Commission for Tribal Affairs stated that the escort was a clan-led initiative, denying involvement from any political group, including Hamas. The militant group also denied taking control of the aid. Civil society organizations say the deliveries were destined for vulnerable families in a territory still grappling with severe shortages after nearly 2 years of war. And as the war between Russia and Ukraine continues to rage on, the European Union has decided to extend sanctions on Russia for another 6 months.
This at a summit in Brussels. The sweeping sanctions by the bloc include freezing of Russian central bank assets worth $234 billion, which will remain in effect until early 2026.
At the same time, we are keeping up the pressure on Russia, and we have adopted 17 package of sanctions, and the work to deliver a new one, powerful package, is well underway.
The EU's decision comes as a contingency plan over rising fears that Hungary, which has been a strong supporter of Russia, might not support the decision of the bloc to renew the economic sanctions.
Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán took the decision to the 11th hour when the sanctions came up for renewal in January this year. A refusal by Hungary could land a severe blow to the leverage the European Union holds over Russia.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called upon the European Union to support the sanctions. In a video address, Zelensky urged the EU leaders to adopt the sanctions targeting Russia's oil trade, shadow tanker fleet, banks and military supply chains.
In the midst of all this, Russia and Ukraine released soldiers as part of the latest prisoners of war swap that was agreed upon during peace talks in Istanbul. Both countries, however, did not mention the number of prisoners exchanged in the latest swap. Following the release, Ukrainian soldiers draped in the country's national flag embraced their family. According to Ukraine's coordination headquarters for the treatment of prisoners of war, a majority of the released soldiers were held captive for more than 3 years.
On the other hand, Russia said that another group of its soldiers have returned and are undergoing psychological treatment in Belarus. The country's defense ministry posted a video of the released soldiers chanting Russia, Russia, Russia. But on the battlefront, the Ukrainian army claimed that it halted Russian advancements in the northeast border regions of Sumy. The country's army chief claimed that Russian offensive in Sumy have been choked off and the line of combat has been stabilized. The army chief has also called for more fortifications in the region.
And EU leaders have gathered at a summit in Brussels. Two issues on the top of the agenda are Europe's defense priorities and US tariffs.
Well, the summit is being held just a day after NATO's European members gave into Trump's demand of increasing defense spending to 5% GDP. The threat of US abandoning this military alliance pushed heightened military expenditure through, but the reality is now beginning to set in. How will European nations afford the substantial increase amid flailing economies?
Europe's problem has been compounded by Trump's reciprocal tariff threat, which hangs in the balance. Donald Trump first slapped retaliatory tariffs in April, but suspended them for 90 days to allow countries an opportunity to strike a deal.
The problem is that on behalf of the United States, we have a heavyweight deal maker. On our side, European Union, we have a light capacity and capability leaders to negotiate. So the problem is that the American negotiator is very strong. Our negotiators are rather weak. That's the problem.
Spain is the lone NATO member that secured an agreement to opt out of the 5% defense spending target, but the tariff challenge still looms large, even if Spain's Prime Minister calls the United States a friend.
From a more political point of view, what I want to convey is that Spain is an open country. It is a country that is friendly to its friends, and we consider the United States a friend of Spain.
Now, for Germany's new Chancellor Friedrich Merz, it's an uphill political and economic battle right at the beginning of his term.
This is my first time here. We have a large number of topics to discuss, of course the reverberations of yesterday's NATO summit and the consequences for the European Union. We will have to talk about the competitiveness of European industry.
Trump's tariffs are suspended only till the 9th of July. The European Union has little time left to negotiate and determine what cards it can play. The ongoing summit in Brussels is critical for the bloc to decide its next move.
Very friendly. They rip us off. It's so sad to see. It's so pathetic.
And at least 16 people have been killed in protests across Kenya as businesses and residents were left to clean up the devastation in the capital and beyond.
The Kenyan government has termed the protest as terrorism disguised as dissent and has called it a coup attempt.
Now, the streets of Kenya were once again awash with the bitter smell of tear gas and the chilling echo of gunfire. What began as a digital roar from a defiant generation Z erupted into a violent nationwide confrontation with swathes of the capital in smoldering ruins. Exactly 1 year after anti-tax demonstrations peaked with a crowd storming parliament, Kenya found itself caught in a brutal deja vu.
On Wednesday, a potent mixture of digital activism and simmering public anger boiled over. Thousands of young Kenyans, many mobilized by the rallying cry of Ruto must go, on platforms like Twitter, gathered on the streets of Nairobi and other major cities, waving branches as symbols of peaceful dissent.
The clashes quickly escalated, transforming peaceful marches into chaotic running battles.
We are here to seek justice and also for a better Kenya.
We want a complete overhaul of the system. Every system is rotten, from the ministries to service providers to we need a complete overhaul.
The aftermath in Nairobi's central business district is a grim tableau of devastation. Charred storefronts gape open, exposing ransacked interiors. Business owners from the smallest electronic shops to large supermarkets and banks are left rummaging through the debris.
Look, everything is the ban. Yeah? So, please, government, try talking of the Gen Z, because all this all is happening because of GNC. So please, GNC, just try to sit down then to talk to the government.
You see, we had to close. So yesterday we didn't report as we are expecting this Madamano. So we feared our shops might be broken or your safety also. So we decided not to come yesterday. So we never came yesterday because of that fear.
Now, as Kenyans begin a painful cleanup process, the memory of Wednesday's bloody events serve as a reminder of the soaring tensions between a defiant youth movement and a government determined to maintain control irrespective of the cost. And a viral manga with an uncanny track record of past predictions has foretold a catastrophic super quake striking Japan on the 5th of July 2025.
And now a slew of about 500 earthquakes rattles the Tokara Islands. The line between fiction and terrifying reality blurs. The experts say that the fears of a quake are unfounded, but many flight cancellations point to the rising fears. More in this next report. Take a look.
A chilling dread has descended. Japan, a nation acquainted with the raw, devastating power of seismic activity, now finds itself crippled by a unique form of collective dread. A prophecy hinting at cities sinking into the sea and tsunamis 3 times larger than 2011's has ignited a firestorm of fear across the nation and beyond. Ryotatsuki, a manga artist from Japan, who is now being called the new Baba Vanga, made the prophecy. The current geological unrest in Japan has only amplified the panic. A relentless swarm of about 500 tremors has rattled the remote Tokara Islands in recent days, including a magnitude 5 quake. A similar period of seismic activity in the Tokara area was seen in September 2023, when 346 earthquakes were recorded within 15 days. Japan is one of the world's most seismically active countries, sitting on top of 4 major tectonic plates along the western edge of the Pacific Ring of Fire. The archipelago, home to around 125 million people, experiences around 1,500 jolts every year and accounts for around 18% of the world's earthquakes.
So, if you live near the Nankai Trough, it's pretty certain there will be an earthquake very soon in geological terms. But that means 1,000 or 2,000 years. Whereas what we human beings want to know, will there be one when I'm alive? And unfortunately, science cannot answer that question.
Now, there is a fear of a mega quake. The ripple effects are already devastating. Airlines, particularly those in Hong Kong and other Asian hubs, are scrambling to cancel flights to Japan due to dramatically reduced demand. Bookings have plummeted by as much as 83% for late June and early July, with carriers like Hong Kong Airlines suspending routes to several southern Japanese cities. The economic impact on Japan's vital tourism industry is already severe, a stark illustration of how an unproven prediction can exert a very real, very tangible influence on global travel. While seismologists vehemently dismiss any scientific link between these events and the manga's prophecy, stressing the impossibility of precise earthquake prediction, the public's anxiety remains palpable. The confluence of genuine seismic activity and the viral prediction has created a potential cocktail of fear, overwhelming scientific reassurances. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. On the other side, India's Met Department has issued an orange warning, orange alert for heavy to very heavy rains for parts of Himachal Pradesh. And this is after 5 people were killed in flash floods triggered by a cloudburst. We'll bring you all the details.
Colombian President Gustavo Petro has signed into law a major labor reform aimed at strengthening workers' rights. The law marks one of Petro's most ambitious social policy victories.
This week on the West Asia Post, the war that began on June 13th ended with a sudden ceasefire on the 25th of June. War Iranians and Israelis prepared for the lightning pace of escalation. Also on the show, we talk about the US-Iran relationship before and after the war and the cost of war in West Asia.
Watch the West Asia Post with me, Radi Francis, only on WION World is One.
Welcome back. You're watching World DNA with Habe and I'm Shivan. Let's start with the headlines at this hour.
US Secretary of State Marco Rubio will host foreign ministers from Australia, India and Japan on the 1st of July to bolster efforts to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific region.
The US president is reportedly pushing the Israeli prime minister to end the 20-month war in Gaza. Reports say Trump brought up the matter during a phone call with Netanyahu after end of war with Iran.
Iran Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says a bill suspending cooperation with UN nuclear watchdog is now binding after being approved by a top vetting body. Final decision ultimately to be taken by the Supreme Leader Khamenei.
US media report says the Trump administration is considering helping Iran access $30 billion to build a civilian nuclear program as part of attempts to bring Tehran back to the negotiating table.
Barack Obama and Joe Biden sent pallets of cash, American taxpayer dollars, in a failed attempt to buy the Iranian regime's compliance with a weak and ineffective deal.
White House claims that world is closer to peace due to Trump ordering the strikes against Iran, takes a dig at the past presidencies, saying they tried to buy Tehran's compliance with dollars.
Seoul prosecutors released new footage of the incident in May that show a suspect pouring flammable liquid in a crowded subway carriage before setting it on fire.
5 tigers found dead in a wildlife sanctuary in Karnataka. Officials suspect deaths caused due to deliberate poisoning.
Markets are betting on deeper Fed rate cuts, partly on expectations that Trump could replace Powell with a more dovish chair. But investors warn that any new Fed leader won't have free rein, and central bank independence remains a key concern.
Top seed Jessica Pegula gets a big win ahead of Wimbledon. The American held off compatriot Emma Navarro in Manhamburg Open for her first semi-final since April.
Spiel, das ist Sieg Pegula. Wir gewinnen 2:1. Jessica Pegula.
In a troubling incident in India, 5 tigers, a mother and its cubs, were found dead in a wildlife sanctuary on a single day.
Now, the deaths were reported in the Chamarajanagar district in Karnataka, triggered an outcry among conservationists and wildlife enthusiasts.
The deaths occurred within the Malai Mahadeshwara Wildlife Sanctuary. Preliminary suspicion points to poisoning as the cause of death. According to forest officials, the tiger carcasses were discovered on Wednesday evening during a routine patrol by the forest staff.
A cow carcass was also found close to the tiger, leading officials to believe that the tigers may have been poisoned through the baited remains of the cow, possibly in retaliation for a previous kill.
State Forest Minister announced the formation of a high-level investigation team to probe the deaths. The minister has directed the committee to submit a detailed report soon. He also instructed that criminal cases be registered against those found responsible.
According to the 5th tiger census conducted in 2022, India is now home to 3,682 tigers. Karnataka is currently ranked second in the country in terms of tiger population. Now, India's Met Department has issued an orange warning for heavy to very heavy rain for parts of Himachal Pradesh.
This is after it reported 3 cloudbursts, 9 flash floods and 3 landslides that resulted in 5 fatalities and 1 injury. On Thursday, Chief Minister Sukhvinder Singh Sukhu directed all the deputy commissioners in the state to stay alert and ensure 24/7 accessibility to the public. Officials have also been instructed to relocate people living near rivers. Additionally, locals and tourists have been warned against venturing near rivers during the rainy season.
In Gujarat, an orange alert has been sounded in Surat, Navsari, Valsad and Rajkot, among other places. These places are expected to witness heavy to very heavy rainfall. The IMD has also predicted light thunderstorms with lightning and surface wind to 30 to 40 kilometers an hour in other regions like Ahmedabad, Vadodara and Gandhinagar.
Meanwhile, in Kerala, orange alerts indicating very heavy rainfall have been issued for Ernakulam, Idukki, Thrissur, Wayanad and Malappuram. Considering the weather conditions, the state government has declared school holidays in several districts. Additionally, mining activity has been banned until the 30th of this month. According to the Met Department, the national capital is expected to experience rain in the next 3 to 4 days. The maximum temperature is expected to drop to 33 to 35 degrees Celsius, while the minimum temperature would be around 25 to 27. The IMD said that the southwest monsoon has advanced over parts of Rajasthan, Haryana and Punjab, and the southwest monsoon will advance over the remaining parts of the country in the coming days. Here's a question which has baffled everyone. Why did the Boeing 787 Dreamliner's safety systems fail? The answers lie in terabytes of digital clues now.
Recorded on 2 small but tough black boxes, this data extraction has now been successfully completed. Here's a report on what air crash investigators have to look through.
Air crash investigators are like digital forensic experts. What tools do they have at their disposal to piece together the story of what happened on June 12th? The answers lie in terabytes of digital clues recorded on Flight 171's black boxes. The flight data recorder, or the FDR, on the 787 Dreamliner records over 1,000 flight parameters from throttle position and cabin pressure to speed, altitude and rudder angle. This data provides crucial insights into the aircraft's performance and systems. The cockpit voice recorder, or CVR, captures the last 2 hours of cockpit conversation between the pilots, ambient sounds and warning tones.
So when we refer to the black boxes in aviation, in fact we say boxes in plural because it is made up of 2 different devices. One is the flight data recorder. It records all the input that has been entered into the computer and the real-time input of the pilot as well. It includes the trajectory, the speed, the attitude and so on. The other one is the cockpit voice recorder. So as the name suggests, it includes the conversations in the cockpit. It also includes the conversation with the air traffic controllers as well. Why it is so important? Because we then can identify whether there were any oral signals, warnings in the cockpit and what conversations have taken place, what checklists and procedures they have done in the cockpit.
All of these systems generate prodigious amounts of data. Air crash investigators use artificial intelligence to sort and analyze this data, identify subtle patterns, correlations and deviations that human analysts might not be able to spot. AI is also used to recreate potential system failure chains that could have led to a catastrophic failure.
Now, the Central African Republic is to observe 3-day national mourning after 29 students were killed in a stampede inside their school in the capital Bangui.
This was after a transformer explosion. The disaster unfolded during national exams that were being held in Barthélemy Boganda High School in Bangui. An explosion from an electrical transformer on the school premises triggered panic among thousands of students.
A 3-day period of national mourning will be declared throughout the country in tribute to the victims of this tragedy, which has affected the entire national community.
The victims were rushed to medical centers across the capital, with some transported on motorcycles in the absence of proper ambulance services. The tragedy has sparked anger among residents and parents who accuse the government of negligence, citing repeated issues with the electrical transformer and lack of maintenance.
In Colombia, President Gustavo Petro has signed into law a major labor reform aimed at strengthening workers' rights.
While the move has been celebrated by trade unions and progressive groups, employers warn that it could increase costs and hit small businesses negatively.
Now, this law marks one of Petro's most ambitious social policy victories for the Petro government and its allies in the trade unions, restores basic workers' rights that were gradually stripped away since the early 1990s.
The new law includes series of measures: a shorter working day, strict limit on weekly overtime and well-defined day and night shift timings, surcharge pay as much as 100% for working on a holiday or weekly off day. It also aims to reduce reliance of short-term contact for stable employment. The law makes inclusion of disabled people in the workforce mandatory. Lastly, it proposes no disciplinary process before contract termination.
The law is passed, but not without a compromise. Efforts to extend paternity leave or grant time off for menstrual Health issues were dropped in final negotiations, and while formal employees will get the benefit of the law, informal workers, who make up a large portion of Colombia's labor force, may see little immediate benefit. The victory in passing the labor reform has infused Petro with confidence. He has vowed to push for a broad constitutional reform that aims to fulfill his campaign promise of the social transformation. But while supporters call it a rights recovery, opponents, including business groups and some unions, warn that it could backfire. The argument against the reform is that raising the cost of formal employment could hurt small businesses and trigger higher unemployment at a time when Colombia is facing harsh economic realities.
Del trabajador, centrales obreras y
Amid the ongoing global conflicts, the US President has unveiled a massive $893 billion defense request for upcoming 2026 budget.
From a leaner tech-driven force, one that can strike from a distance and win future wars, to pushing for drones and missiles. Take a look at what does Trump's defense request include.
Now, Trump's new defense blueprint proposes an $892.6 billion spend for fiscal 2026. The plan slashes F-35 stealth fighter orders to just 47, down from 68 under Biden. Only 3 warships are set for procurement. Instead, Trump is pushing for more drones, more missiles, and a pay raise for troops. But what about the controversial Golden Dome missile defense shield? It's been shifted to a separate $25 billion package in Congress.
Now, according to Reuters, the US Air Force is prioritizing long-range systems like the Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, JASSM-ER, and the Long-Range Anti-Ship Missile, LRASM. Meanwhile, small drones used extensively in Ukraine are getting a big boost in funding. The idea behind this is to fight from a distance using cheap autonomous systems instead of costly air power.
To fund the strategic pivot, the Navy is cutting over 7,200 civilian jobs. Older, expensive ships and planes are set to be retired. Procurement of the precision strike missile, which places the ATACMS used in Ukraine, is being scaled back. And while Trump wants just 47 F-35s, Congress is ready and is already pushing to raise the number to nearly 70.
All this comes against a geopolitical backdrop of escalation. Russia's war in Ukraine has entered its 4th year, and of course it's well into its 4th year rather. And in West Asia, the Israel-Iran conflict flared dangerously with missile strikes and counter attacks. Both fronts are driving home the value of standoff weapons, unmanned systems, and a rapid deployment.
In fiscal 2024, U.S. defense outlays total $997 billion in 2025. The budget was trimmed to $895 billion under spending caps. The base budget of $849.8 billion focused nearly 80% on personnel, operations and readiness, with another $300 billion allocated for procurement and research and development.
While Washington rethinks its priorities, so does NATO. At a recent summit, allies agreed to a new goal, defense spending equivalent to 5% of GDP by 2035. And this is for each individual nation which is part of NATO. But that's triggered a pushback from several nations now.
At a recent summit, NATO allies agreed to boost defense spending to 5% of GDP by 2035. Trump called Spain's refusal to sign on terrible, while stating that the US already is at 3.4%, shouldn't be forced to meet the same benchmark. Only a few countries, including Poland and the Baltics, are on track to meet the new goal.
As Congress debates the future of American warfare, one thing is clear: Trump's budget isn't just about cutting costs, it's a signal that future wars will be fought differently. Long-range missiles, unmanned systems, and rapid strike capabilities may be the defining features of conflicts as we're seeing today, and seems like Trump wants America to be ready. Donald Trump may name a new Federal Reserve chair before Jerome Powell's term ends in 2026.
Raising concerns about the Fed's independence, the dollar dropped to a 3.5-year low. Powell says inflation control remains the priority despite Trump's pressure for faster rate cuts. Here's a report.
The relationship with Federal Reserve Chief Jerome Powell is ruffling markets once again. The Wall Street Journal says the president has considered naming the next boss of the central bank before Powell's term ends in 2026, potentially creating what analysts have called a shadow Fed. The dollar sank to new 3.5-year lows versus the euro in Asian morning trade Thursday following the news. One market watcher told Reuters that any such move by Trump would raise questions about the Fed's independence and potentially undermine its credibility. The report follows renewed tensions this week. Trump on Wednesday called Powell terrible for not cutting interest rates more quickly. Meanwhile, the Fed chair appeared before a Senate panel and gave no sign he was in a hurry to make more cuts.
We're committed to returning inflation sustainably to 2% and keeping it there in the long run. And what we're doing now is we had cut rates by 100 basis points, so they've come down quite a bit. And when the time is right, I expect that will continue.
On a second day of testimony Wednesday, Powell said Trump's tariffs could spur inflation, potentially complicating a decision on rates. That issue is now likely to come back into focus as the clock ticks down to the White House's July 9th deadline for trade deals. As for possible successors to Powell, Trump says he's narrowed it down to 3 or 4 names. The leading contenders are reportedly former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh, National Economic Council head Kevin Hassett, current Fed Governor Christopher Waller, and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
On to sports now. Cristiano Ronaldo's chapter with Al Nassr is far from over.
The 5-time Ballon d'Or winner has signed a 2-year contract extension with the Saudi Pro League side. There had been speculation over the 40-year-old's future after he posted on X that this chapter is over, quote-unquote. But just hours after the Saudi Pro League season ended, Al Nassr finished third and trophy-less once again. Ronaldo's contract was set to expire at the end of June, and reports claimed that a few clubs from the ongoing FIFA Club World Cup had expressed interest. But in the end, Ronaldo and Al Nassr returned to the negotiating table. He may not have won a trophy in Saudi Arabia yet, but his individual numbers remain staggering. 99 goals in 111 games since joining in 2023, including back-to-back golden boots in the Saudi Pro League.